Number 16, Maniac Cop. Maniac Cop. I don't know if a lot of you have seen Maniac Cop, but you probably heard of it. I actually bought this movie recently because I was thinking about reviewing it, and it actually surprised me um, how well put together it was, considering the title and the actors. It stars Robert Z'Dar as the Maniac Cop, who you might know from the Frogtown series or Pocket Ninjas, stuff like that. He is in a lot of B movies, and Bruce Campbell is in this as well. A lot of other B movie actors, and essentially it is a B movie. But it seems like a lot more effort was put into it than is really you would think with something called Maniac Cop. Um, Essentially, the storyline is there is a cop. He's kind of a rogue douchebag, and he ends up getting killed in prison. And he comes back as the Maniac Cop, and he is this supernatural killing machine who is in a cop uniform and kills people. And Bruce Campbell is in this, but it's not your typical Bruce Campbell movie. It's pretty early on, like I think around the Evil Dead 2 days. And he's really not playing it campy at all. It's actually really dramatic considering it's Bruce Campbell in a movie called Maniac Cop. But he actually does a really good job with it, and it's unusual for him to not be, throwing one-liners out there. And, he really isn't an action hero in this, but he does a good job with what he's doing. And I like the soundtrack for this one as well. The theme for this is really good. And Robert Z'Dar is quite intimidating. So if you're a fan of B movies, maybe ones that are a little more well put together than the usual fare I review, I'd recommend checking this one out. But the sequels, I've only seen the second one, and I don't know if I would recommend those. Those might be another thing to watch if you want to make fun of it more than anything. So that's Maniac Cop. Number 17, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Alright, the first one, I liked that it was a bit more dramatic than the sequels. I am, of course, talking of the original, not the remake. It is a good horror movie, because a lot of people forget that, Freddy Krueger did not start as a comedic villain, and that made him more scary, because, now that everyone knows the story, it makes it less scary, but it would really be genuinely terrifying to have something attack you in your sleep and kill you, and there's nothing you could do about it. And for this movie, Freddy Krueger stays in the shadows most of the time, and he's kind of built up a little bit more. He only shows up when he really needs to, and that makes it a little creepier. And there are some moments that I find genuinely scary in this film, like when Tina shows up in the body bag in the classroom, and her death scene as well was really well done. So if you're only familiar with the sequels, or maybe you just forgot about the first one, it's a good one to check out, and it's a good Halloween movie to creep you out. Number 18, Gremlins. Gremlins, I recently rewatched this too, and it reminded me of why I like Gremlins so much. It's one of those movies that it started out I think it was kind of supposed to be a kids type movie. Like it was a horror movie, but it was meant to have a younger protagonist and kind of kiddie type thing. And it turned out to kind of be a blend of both things, because they have Corey Feldman's character in it, and but they made the protagonist a little older, and they kind of made it more horror oriented. And I think it's one of those movies where they only realized about halfway through how funny the villains were in this, and they did once again, a good blend of horror and humor, which a lot of the Gremlins ripoff type movies forgot. Like, movies like Ghoulies, like, they get really obnoxious. Like, they really play the slapstick comedy angle. And they also kind of forget about the human characters. Because, you have Gizmo, and you have the Gremlins, and you have all of those characters, but the human characters are really the ones that you're trying to root for, and the ones that are you're going to see for a lot of the movie. And I liked Phoebe Cates, and I liked Zach Galligan, and I liked a lot of the supporting characters too. And I liked that they had deaths, but they also had characters that you rooted for and that you didn't want to die. And that made you care more about the movie. And it was a lot of fun having the gremlins run around and the big climactic battle at the end. And it still holds up as a great Christmas movie. Number 19. Earth Girls Are Easy. Okay, look. I know what you're saying. If you know what Earth Girls Are Easy is, it's really, really cheesy. But that's the point. I think if you hate it, you hate it. It's kind of a taste type thing. But I think part of it is also you gotta kind of get what it's going for. Like, I mean, okay, Earth Girls Are Easy is an 80s movie made in the 80s, but part of the reason it's so 80s is because they were trying to be 80s. They were trying to kind of parody the times and be as over the top and obnoxious as possible. And I like that style of the movie, and I liked Julie Brown's random music numbers in it, and Gina Davis interacting with the aliens. It really is a dumb type comedy, but if you get what it's going for, you'll probably like it. But it is a bizarre movie. I'm not going to say that everyone's going to like it, because it is a little bit obnoxious, but I don't think that it's bad because it's bad. I think it's just a matter of taste, so I think it's a good comedy. You might want to check it out. Number 20, Death Becomes Her. Death Becomes Her, I don't think is as well known as a horror comedy as some of the other ones, but you might know about it. It's got Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn and a lot of other people in it, and it is a comedy about Meryl Streep's sort of she's an actress who is washed up, and she's getting old, and her husband, Bruce Willis, is kind of regretting marrying her, and she stole him from her best friend, who is also, she just sort of harbors this hate against her and wants to kill her. And Meryl Streep's character eventually finds this potion that will make her young again and that she can live forever. And so she takes this potion, and it turns out that, because her best friend is trying to kill her, she found the same potion and made herself young as well. And so these two are they're stealing everything from each other, and they're so petty about it, and they end up trying to kill each other, but they both can't die because they're both immortal. And it's a really funny physical comedy type thing with a lot of nifty effects. And Meryl Streep does a great job with it. Bruce Willis does a great job because, he's not particularly known for strictly comedy roles. He doesn't do really any action in this movie. And almost all of it is done in makeup where you barely recognize him. And he did a great job with it. So it's kind of nifty to see him in a different role. And overall, the movie is pretty well put together. It's a good comedy, so I'd recommend it. Number 21, the Tremors series. I love Tremors. Tremors is a great creature feature. If you're not familiar with them, the first Tremors has got Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward and a bunch of other people. And basically they live in this desert town called Perfection, and they are attacked by these giant underground worm things that only find people through sound and will come out of the dirt and eat you. And they are giants. They're called graboids. And it's another one of those horror comedy type things, but with a different kind of spin. It takes place mostly in this desert town. And, you like seeing Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon as these friends that are kind of trying to escape this kind of handyman life in the desert, and to see everyone in this town who is friends and family try to team up together to fight these giant worms, and they do a really great job with it. The effects are really cool. The sequels I liked a lot, and the second one's probably my favorite, mostly because it's got Burt Gummer in it, who is an excellent character. He's sort of this military type who is way over prepared, has all these guns, all these explosives, all these weapons, and he's fighting these graboids, and eventually they do evolve so they can walk on land and so they can fly and all of these things, and so they have to deal with these, and there's really cool practical effects with it, and really funny characters that you root for. So the fourth one I wouldn't entirely recommend, though it does have Billy Drago in it, so there's that. But in the TV series, I'm not really sure on. I haven't seen very much of it at all, but definitely the first and second one I'd recommend. The third one, if you like the first two. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Tremors. Number 22, Splash. I like Splash. It may seem like a girly movie, and it might be, but, it's got Tom Hanks in it, it's got John Candy, Eugene Levy, it's got a lot of great comedians in it, and it's not all completely girl-oriented, despite having a mermaid in it, though that is why I liked it as a kid. But it's a good kind of romantic comedy, but I really don't think it's entirely for girls. And it's got some cool practical effects in it too, and a lot of funny situations. John Candy does a really great job in it as Tom Hanks's brother, and Eugene Levy, who is trying to catch this mermaid and taking the situation so seriously. And it does kind of get serious near the end. And I liked that it sort of didn't go so far in the goofy area that you could take it seriously. If you like romantic comedies, or if you like comedies with Tom Hanks, then you might enjoy this one.
Number 23, Phantasm. Phantasm I liked, and I talked about him in the Phantasm reviews, so I'm not going to go over it too much here, but I will say that it's one of the few movies that I reviewed that I actually thought was a decently made movie that really creeped me out, and I thought it was really nifty. It's not really clear on everything, which works fine for the first movie. So if you want to be spooked around Halloween, it's a good movie to check out. And that's all I'm going to say on that one.
Number 24, Little Shop of Horrors. I am talking about the musical version of this. I have not seen the original one, which, if you liked it, I don't know if I'd recommend it on this list, because it seems to me more of those B-movie, so bad they're good type movies, especially if it's Roger Corman. But, Little Shop of Horrors, I like it for a few reasons. One, I really like Rick Moranis, and I do like that he's not your typical Hollywood lead. And, I kind of like offbeat characters that are not, your typical type Hollywood characters. But I also liked that, it's an offbeat musical. It's not, Sound of Music type stuff. I mean, it's the type of stuff that I like. It's got horror, it's got aliens, it's got strange things in it. And it's also genuinely well done. And I also like that it is a remake, but a good remake, of the one that I mentioned before, Little Shop of Horrors, which was a old Roger Corman movie, creature feature, that was filmed in about 2 days on a bet, I think. It was also Jack Nicholson's first feature, and they decided to do a musical remake of it. They did it off-Broadway before they did it as a movie. And I like that they took this really schlocky idea and they turned it into a really funny, really well-made musical. And it's the type of reinvention that changes it but keeps it the same. And so it's a good example of a remake done right, where you respect the source material but you make it your own. And you really like the characters, the songs are really catchy, and the sets are cool, and I'd recommend seeing it. Number 25, My Name is Bruce. This is admittedly one that I included because if you couldn't tell, I'm a Bruce Campbell fan. And really, this is only going to appeal to Bruce Campbell fans. If you're not familiar with his work, if you don't like Bruce Campbell, or even if, you just haven't really taken the time to look at the other Bruce Campbell stuff, this is not the one to start with. This is for Bruce Campbell fans, and it's really funny if you get it. If you know about his movies and sort of his sense of humor and sort of the jokes about him and Sam Raimi and Ted Raimi, it is really funny. But it's one of those things, like, it has a lot of in-jokes that, you kind of gotta get to get it, because it is really cheesy. It's got a cheesy villain, it's got a lot of hokey jokes in it, but it is definitely a Bruce Campbell film, and you could tell that they put a lot of effort into it, and it's not a good horror movie by any means, but it is a really good comedy, and it's like a love letter to the fans, and that was a lot of fun. Number 26, The Howling. So if you saw my reviews of the Howling sequels, it's kind of easy to forget that the first Howling movie was actually a good film. It didn't deserve to have 7 sequels. It didn't need 7 sequels, although they were pretty funny. But the original Howling is a good werewolf movie, and it got a little bit overshadowed by American Werewolf in London. They came out around the same time. But it's got good effects. They're just different than the approach from American Werewolf in London. And it's just, depends on your taste. But, before you knew what the Howling movies were, if you just went into this watching it not knowing what it was, it has a good twist. The twist that it's the werewolves and, everyone around her is trying to kill her. And the ending was genuinely tragic, even though the effects may have been questionable toward the end there. But yeah, if you like genuine horror films, not so much on the humor side, that's a good werewolf movie to watch. Number 27, Zombieland. This one surprised me in a very good way, because, Zombieland was one of those movies that came out, another one that people were claiming, like, oh, it's like Shaun of the Dead, and, every zombie movie since Shaun of the Dead claimed to be like Shaun of the Dead, and it was not very funny at all, the movies claiming that, and I don't genuinely get surprised or enjoy a lot of recent releases. It takes a bit to make me want to go to the movies and really enjoy something and want to purchase that, and especially horror comedies. I mean, that's usually never happens to me. And that's why I liked it so much, because I really liked Jesse Eisenberg's performance, Woody Harrelson. They did a great job with their characters, and it's a zombie comedy that really works. Because, again, the seriousness is there. You are worried about whether people are going to get eaten. You're sad for them because their families are gone, and they have sad character moments, where they talk about what happened to their families, what happened to the rest of the world. But there's also really humorous moments where, they fight like a clown zombie and zombies in the store and things like that. And you get a lot of cool, violent moments in it, and there's a lot of great cameos. And if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil the surprise for you about the big cameo in it, but it definitely was an enjoyable watch, and I would watch it again, and I hope you watch it too. Number 28, Repo the Genetic Opera. Repo the Genetic Opera, I think, is one that is a little bit overhyped, so I'm not going to talk about that it's the greatest movie ever made. It's not, but it is a good musical. Some of the songs are a little off, but it was enjoyable to watch. Anthony Stewart Head was really good as the lead in it. They had a lot of cool side characters, and Paris Hilton, not a lot of people, I think, are fans of her, But that is to the character's advantage, because she's not meant to be a likable character. She's meant to be obnoxious, and she kind of gets her comeuppance in the end, so it's enjoyable to watch for that. One thing I will say, the movie is really heavy. Like, you feel like it's 3 hours long when it's really not. So it's one of those you gotta kind of be paying attention to, and be prepared to kind of get into, because it's not one of those kind of sit down, eat popcorn, and watch kind of movies. At least that's how I felt about it. But it is nifty to see, and again, I do like it's not your traditional musical type movie, and it's got some gore in it too, and some good humor. Number 29, Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is a good zombie comedy, and I know I talked about it a little bit in the Zombieland entry. Shaun of the Dead, I think, beats it just a little bit. It did come out first, and I thought it did it better. It's one of those things where it blends British humor very well with the zombie comedy type thing. It's basically these two slacker types who have to go and save their friends and family, and there's a zombie apocalypse, and it's got this. I liked that they labeled it as a romantic comedy with zombies. And that is what it is. Sean is trying to get back his girlfriend to kind of fix their issues, and it really does have some sad moments in it for something so funny, and I think that's why the funny moments are so funny and the sad moments are so sad, because you have these moments where people die, people that you really liked, some people that you didn't. But, not everyone makes it out of this film, and it's, not like a traditional comedy where everything works out in the end. And I liked that. No one is off the chopping block, and you are worried about what's going to happen. And the characters are really funny, and it all blends together really well. And if you liked that, if you've seen Shaun of the Dead, I'd recommend Hot Fuzz as well, which I didn't put on this list because it's not technically a genre film, but it's got the same type of humor, the same two leads, just as different genre film, and that one was pretty good too. Number 30, The Evil Dead Trilogy. Evil Dead is an awesome series, and Evil Dead 2 is my favorite movie, so if you ever wondered that, Evil Dead 2. And I put all of these movies together because really, I don't think it'd be fair to give them all different slots, and they all are really good in their own right. If I had to recommend just one of them, like if you didn't want to see any of them except one, see Evil Dead 2, because you really don't need to see all three of them to understand any part of the series. Because most of them they have a recap at the beginning. They're a continuation, but stories on their own. Because mostly, there's kind of this argument whether Evil Dead 2 is a remake of Evil Dead 1. And it's really not. Basically what happened was they didn't have rights to their own clips for the first one, and so they decided to just basically recap or remake the first part of the movie so people would understand it, and then continue with their own story, which they do. But you can still put them together as a sequence of events. And the same thing with Army of Darkness. I think they just, because the studios wanted to kind of separate things, so that Army of Darkness was kind of on its own. They did a recap, which they filmed on their own as well, which was sort of a remake recap. And then they continued their own story. So again, you could put these all together in sequential order, and it would tell one long story, but you could watch them by themselves. And these are the best horror comedies. And I know this has basically just been a horror comedy love fest, but I have to go over it again. Because one of the things that I love so much about these movies is that they're so violent and they're so gory and scary. And so when, you see Ash hiding in a basement from, something that he thinks is coming out of the ground and realizes that, the creature is in the basement with him. And you're like, oh my god, this creature is in there. What is it going to be? And it comes out and it's so scary. And then he screams and it sounds like this woman shrieking. It's so funny because of this contrast of, this really scary demon's gonna kill him, but you have, you know, how anyone would react. He just starts screaming like a little girl, and he's this, tough guy with muscles and a ripped shirt, and they blend these things together so well. And I think it's funny how in the first one it's not a comedy at all on purpose. But there are a lot of funny moments unintentionally because of the low budget, because of they lost actors when they needed them, and they had replacements and dummies and things like that. And there's a lot of funny acting moments from, how inexperienced everyone was. And it comes together so well as this independent, quirky movie, and really why the second one worked so well, because they knew it was so funny. They decided to do it on purpose, and that's why it worked so well. And the third one, it was good because, they more go the action route than anything on that one, but there's a lot of really cool Bruce Campbell moments playing with his one-liners and quirks about his character, which makes it a good action movie. So yeah, I love the Evil Dead trilogy. If you haven't seen it, you really should. And I think that's how I'm gonna end this video. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you check out some of these movies. And that's 30 genre movies that don't suck.